ones, but not right now.
No?
Okay.
I'm gonna stand toast.
People are always asking if Greg and I have seen the Sasquatch on our adventures. So I thought I'd dig up this old footage that was cut from the 30-Day Survival Challenge Canadian Rockies series, because we don't have a new video for Greg right now. He's out filming a new 30-Day Survival Challenge on Vancouver Island.
We should, if we get to the
So without further ado, here is Greg and myself talking about our time surviving out on History Channel's Alone Season 3.
So did you see any Sasquatch, sign of Sasquatch in Patagonia when you were there?
Well, no, I didn't have a mirror, so... No, I don't think I believe this thing of the Sasquatch. I don't.
You don't believe in Sasquatch?
No.
I don't think I do either necessarily. But, I mean, there was all kinds of weird stuff that happened while I was out there that was really weird. And I don't know about and unexplainable, like the sounds in the woods. You know, when they came every 2 weeks to check our batteries and change our batteries and stuff, I was like, what is out behind me? Who's, like, chopping wood out behind me? There was
well, I kept hearing noises like that, and, you know, I think it was the red deer were in the rut and probably tangling with each other and banging around and stuff, I think. And I'm pretty sure I heard a red deer call, because it's similar to elk, right? And I know for a fact I heard red deer calling. Like, they're similar to elk, right? So
maybe that was.
And I saw tracks of, like, elk tracks. So it was those red deer.
That makes sense, because it was this. You know, it's like all I could think of is this stupid, scary movie I watched. You know, and they were in the woods and they're looking for Sasquatch and there's thwack. You know, in a space of time and thwack. You know, and that. But that now that you say that, red deer, of course, their heads. Boom.
Well,
back up, posture, go forward, boom.
Yeah, they're not like bighorns, I wouldn't think, but where they smash heads. But they still, you know, elk fight, the red deer fight, the deer fight.
Or it's fighting Sasquatches.
Oh yeah, well.
And they're trying to scare me out of their territory or something. I don't know.
Well, when I was a kid, my parents took me to a supposed Sasquatch sighting near Mission, BC. And they had the prints, they were casting plaster casts of the prints and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
But as time went on, it turned out to be a hoax. So somebody was just making these tracks and, you know, running around in the bush with a suit, and people get glimpses of this. And so then this Rene Dahinden was he wrote books on it, and he was there checking this all out, but it ended up being a hoax. So.
All a scam, huh?
Mm-hmm.
How about those birds? Did you have those birds at your site that were like in the middle of the night, they'd be like, and scream?
No.
I had some screaming birds that were so ridiculous.
The pigs.
Yeah.
Pigs, the first week I was there, they'd come right close to the shelter too. They probably were only 20, 30 feet in the thick brush behind my shelter, and they would just start squealing. And the first time I heard it was the second night I was there. Scared the heck out of me, because it was like they were right beside my shelter. And there wasn't just one or two, there was a group of them, and they just started squealing. So, of course they warned us how dangerous they were, but I didn't really worry about them.
Yeah, at the beginning too. There was some, like I heard a squeal up in the woods, and then one time they came in, like right up to my fireplace, and was like, startled by my sight or something, and then they just like freaked out and squealed a whole bunch, and all of them were tromping in different directions and ran off. And
yeah, and the funny thing is, you never saw them in the daytime. Like, I mean, I had my bow, but there was never any sign. You didn't hear them. You didn't see sign of them hardly ever in the daytime. But at night, you would hear them. So pretty hard to hunt with a bow at night.
Yeah. And I heard them. I only heard them 3 times the whole time I was there. And then once the snow started to fly, like halfway through, a couple times there were snowfalls. I'd go out and check all over the place. Not a single track of anything. No rabbits, no...
Yeah, I wasn't there for the snow part. But.
Yep. You were there when it was
There
freezing.
was a skip. Oh, yeah, it was freezing.
Did your lake start to freeze over?
Along the edge, it froze. My water bottle froze solid a couple of times, and actually there was a little skiff of snow, but as soon as the sun came out, it was gone in no time.
Yeah.
The snowfall that I was there for.
Yeah, all my snowfalls were gone by like noon, pretty much. There was maybe one time it stayed over the night, but it wasn't more than, an inch to begin with. It was kind of disappointing. I was hoping to be out there in like 2 feet of snow the whole time. That's why I'd harvested up 2 days worth of firewood every time.
Yeah. Well, I burnt every scrap of firewood for 500 yards down that beach because there was no dead trees or really anything. So it was all my firewood was just stuff that blew in off the lake,
Mm-hmm. What was the most interesting thing that happened to you out there?
Well, of course, everybody saw the fox. That was irritating. Stealing your bait and this and that. 3 weeks trying different triggers, different this, that. Finally gave up on that because you go for the pigs and the fox takes your bait every time. That was frustrating. But the funniest thing was I had set lines in this creek hanging off of branches. I had about 3 on this creek, and I came to check my lines. There was this huge log that had fallen across the creek, and I had 1 line on that log. So I pulled the line, and I knew I had a fish, but the water was like 6 feet deep, but I could see he was tangled on some roots of a tree at the bottom. But he was wrapped around so many times, and there was no way to get him off, and he broke the line, and he swam upstream. I could see him swimming away with my hook and everything else. So I went up the river fishing for another hour, and I actually did catch a nice fish. I came back to reset the line on the log, and this fish must have died upstream, floated down, and he was just floating against the log. So I got my hook back on that fish that broke the line.
Huh.
That was interesting.
What do you think causes that? Because I've had a couple that were like...
Swallowed the hook and
killed
whatever,
him?
or just, he was alive when he snapped the line. I don't know.
Like he had
Trauma?
a stroke. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Because twice I hauled in dead fish, and all I can think is that like they struggled so hard it killed them. But other times I pulled them in, and they were struggling still like the dickens, and they were...
Yeah.
They had tangled my line, like that much line out into the water of 20-pound test, and they had coiled it up into a wad like this of just like these snarls and twists. Like,
I had that too.
it was like unreal.
Yeah, I had that too. Yeah. Another good fish story. There was one, I knew there was a fish on it, and there was a log or like a branch sticking out of the water, and this fish had wrapped itself around there. It was about, I don't know, like maybe 40, 50 yards out. Little ways. So I started throwing rocks at the stick that he was stuck on. About fluky, but about the 3rd shot, I hit the branch and broke it off. Pulled him and the branch into shore. Got my fish out of it.
That was nice.
Yeah. Because I lost a lot of hooks in the beginning. And then I had to go to bobbers and this and that. Going to the bottom, I would get snagged every time.
Yeah, my spot was pretty clear, like right along, and then there was the weeds. And so I built my dock out so I could hang 3 different poles off of the dock down into the weeds where they were crossing and stuff a lot. And then there was, down here, there were some logs and stuff, and they're in the logs, they were always in there, the bigger ones. And so I had one bamboo pole that hung out, and the line went right down into the water, and just enough so that it was like 3 inches below the water. And I'd put gills or grubs or whatever I had that day that was, most prevalent. And I put it there, and that way they'd hit it, and every once in a while a bigger one would be able to go down and underneath that one stick, and he'd tangle it. Most of the time I could jiggle it enough he'd come out, because that's why I kept it short. But then there was a couple times I couldn't, so I made like a spear out of like an 18-foot long piece of bamboo, and set a fish hook into the end, and I jab it down his throat and pull back through the gills, and or jab it down his mouth and out the gills and pull back and just break my line.
Yeah, well, that's smart.
And then I had the hook from
yes,
he was hooked with, and
exactly, yeah.
And then one other time I lost a hook, and then a month later I caught a fish, and I took the hook out of his mouth, and he was still attached to the line. I was like, wait a minute, there's still a hook. How is he still attached to the line? I'm holding the hook, and no line, and a little piece of. And I was like, what? I got my hook back. I think at the end I did lose one more hook, but
right.
I'm not sure if I lost it on a fish or if I lost it in my pocket, because when I got home, I counted them and I was down a hook. So.
Well, I got down to 4 hooks. That's all I had left. I had started making some wooden hooks, but I didn't know if they were going to work or not. So then I went to my 60-pound test because I just did not want to lose any more hooks. And I was fishing with that 60-pound the one day, and I got snagged again. And it was a big log, big heavy log, but with that line I was able to pull this entire log, which was about 6 feet long, into shore.
Yeah.
So I got my hook back that time, and then this log had a bunch of flies and other hooks stuck in it.
Mm-hmm.
So other people had been fishing there and lost their hooks too.
Really?
But none of the hooks were really usable. They were all rusted and they broke, and they'd been there a while. But I got my hook back.
Yeah. Have you ever caught a fish with a gouge?
No.
Hook? No?
No.
Have you ever tried it?
No.
I've never tried it either. I mean, back in the day, the Native Americans would catch fish with the gouges all the time. Well, maybe not all the time, because back in the day they could have just, make fish traps.
Yeah.
And that's where my dock idea came from. It was in an old Native American lore book or something. It showed a picture of all these X braces across the river, and then inside of those was fish traps, just 3 or 4 deep of baskets tucked into there, so that either the fish coming down the river or running the river could get stuck. And so I had the idea of I'll just build my dock out and use it for a different purpose, but pounding stuff into the lake and making a dock. And
how long was your dock?
it was about 8 feet. From the shore it was 12 feet, because there was stepping stones that I had rolled over and in there, so I could step,
Yeah.
6 feet, and then get onto my dock, and then travel the length of the dock. And so I think it was about 12 feet out, and it was right there at the edge of the weeds, so those lines on those poles only had to hang out.
Good spot.
Yeah.
Good spot to be in.
Mm-hmm.
That lake we were at, that's where they were hanging out, along the reeds, eh?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, the other day, yeah.
Yeah.
After all this talking about the Sasquatch being real or not, a week later and a few hundred miles further up into the Rockies, this happened.
I heard something go bump in the night last night, about 4, and it took me so long to drag myself out of sleep. I was trying to get my eyes open and trying to lift my head and look out the hammock to look at the stream, because what I heard sounded like I know there's moose and there's bear, but it didn't sound like a bear, it didn't sound like a moose. It sounded 2-legged, and it made it so hard for me to go back to sleep, because it was moving through the brush a little bit, and then it was it spotted us, or it came into the middle of between our 2 hammocks or something, and then it was scrambling, but it was and then down the bank of the gravel and across the other gravel, a scampering sound, so, and it weirded me out so heavily that I had a hard time falling back to sleep, and I just couldn't shake it for an hour. I don't know what it was. In my head I know it has to have been a deer,
and with the way it was spooked, maybe it was like this, and so it was like, you know, and so it scampered a little bit more of a pattern than it's in a usual, you know, and off and away, because it was trying to cross the gravel, and maybe the sound of the rocks that it disturbed on the gravel bank, and as they rolled, it added to it to make that effect of 2 feet, and that it wasn't a Rocky Mountain Sasquatch baby, because it definitely wasn't a daddy Sasquatch. If it was Sam Squanch, I guess they're Sam Squanches in Canada, but maybe I'd never been a believer necessarily, but that was creepy. Or maybe it was a kid raised by wolves and he's out here running around and stumbled across our camp and then scampered off. Ugh. Kinda give me the willies. Hence the hard to fall back asleep for some reason.
So leave it in the comments below. Do you believe in the Sasquatch? Have you seen the Sasquatch? Or is the whole thing just a big misunderstanding and it's just pictures from Greg's vacation down in California? Thanks for watching Oven's Rocky Mountain Bushcraft. Be sure to subscribe, turn on those notifications, because there is a new Oven's Rocky Mountain Bushcraft 30-day survival challenge coming soon. So on Greg's behalf, I'll say, we'll see you on the next one. Thank you to all my subscribers. Oven's out.